I'm not swimming this week because I'm covered in road rash, so I have to entertain myself by other means. So, David Gerard over at Pivot to AI surfaced a tweet by Steve Yegge over at Elon Musk's Nazi bar. I mean, say it's a tweet, but it's more of a freaking blog post. Yegge, of course, is the guy who wrote a very influential bunch of posts, and one in particular that kind of really shaped how tech companies think about how they do what they do. But anyway, it was about vibe coding, and in particular, it was vibe coding mishaps, which seems to be popping up every once in a while. There was one like a couple weeks ago, or maybe a week ago, where the robot like nuked the guy's stuff, and then there was like ones like before that where it got owned because there was no security, and it reminded me of my own experience. So I have like de-Viagra'd a handful of WordPress sites in my career. Now, the funny thing is I won't touch WordPress with a 10-foot pole. This is precisely why. But I was the only person in the room who knew how to do it. So it was sort of fell to me to actually sort it out. Of course, rather than actually pay somebody whose job it is to do that kind of thing. But I came up with this idea at the time. I called it like expertise arbitrage. And the idea was that the amount of expertise that you need to set up WordPress is like not nearly where you need to be in order to fix it if it breaks. And so like a lot of these situations just kind of end up looking like a minefield where you've got unexploded ordinances just sitting there waiting to blow you up. And of course the people who make these things, they know about some of them, but they're not like telling you about them, and they're certainly not like really even trying to enumerate them. And that, you could argue is just sort of has to do with the culture of, waivers of liability and so on, the sort of like no warranty, which is the standard. And I mean, I make software, and like there's no way in hell I would warranty it. And the reason why I can't warranty it is because I've made it out of other software that itself is not warranted. And so this sort of idea of being able to sign off on the behavior of stuff is just, you just can't do it. And so I understand that. And then there's also the sort of whole other thing about, expertise arbitrage where you're like, well, like I don't know how to fix my car, but I can drive it. And it's like, sure, but like, imagine if your car is like, I don't know, it just explodes with you in it one day randomly, or like it's just like off-gassing fumes while it's parked or something. And, it's like the car alarm just goes off incessantly and annoys everybody. Like it's understood that, say, for example, like if your car is belching fumes, like that's your problem as the car owner. Like you've got to make somebody do something about it. Whereas like the Viagra spam and the WordPress is not, is kind of your problem, but it's also other people's problems as well. And you're not really liable for it. And like neither is the vendor. But another thing that Yegge said, just in passing in that blog post of a tweet over at the Nazi bar, was where he's like, you always got to write the where clause in your SQL first. And I think that's kind of funny because like about 20 years ago, I read this book called Database in Depth by Christopher Date, where he goes on this like massive rant about like how SQL is designed or anti-designed to the extent that it, people just weren't thinking about it at the time, to do the maximally destructive thing with the least amount of syntax. Like you have to add stuff to like delete and update clauses in order to make them less destructive. But like furthermore, and I mean, I've bitched about SQL in the past. And one of the things about SQL is like the sheer amount of like just manual labor you have to do with it anyway, and then you've got to like add all this stuff on top of it because like the SQL itself was like never really made, to be just a substrate for some other thing. And like I'm just kind of wondering like why in 2025 like we are still using this software, this class of software, and the answer is that it's satisficing. Like it's good enough to get stuff done. But like as it comes to AI, friggin' chatbots that write code for you, like is it satisficing? Like is it good enough? And like it's almost like there's a promise that in the future it'll be good enough at some point. Like it'll, but right now it's kind of like, oh, haha, like it'll work until it doesn't. It'll work until it nukes your stuff. Like it'll work until it just, exposes some kind of a bug. And it's like, how is that possibly load bearing? And I say this because it's like, I've characterized myself like I'm not like an AI skeptic. I would consider myself like an AI meptic. Like I just find it like all of the stuff that the really hypey stuff does is like that's neat, I guess. But like, would you use it? Would you rely on it? Because it seems like you can't. And just like even if there was like a tiny like micro fraction like of the amount of resources that have been plowed into large language models and diffusion models for images and video and whatever, like if like the tiniest little bit of it was diverted to like, I don't know, like let's say programming languages that were safe, let's say databases that like you really needed to make an effort to delete anything permanently, that kind of stuff would be really interesting to do, and I think there would be a lot of value there. It's just like doesn't seem to be as sexy. Of course, that's the stuff I've got to be interested in. Anyway, gonna finish my coffee.